How y'all doing today? This is Keith Stroud from Sound Mountain Studios. And in the studio today, I have a special guest, my stepdaughter, Payton Rain. How you doing today, Payton?
Good.
You doing good?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I wanted to get her in here and talk to her is I feel like there's kind of for lack of terms, I guess a disconnect between us older musicians and a lot of the working, I guess you'd say working musicians, and then the young people who would purchase our music, you know. And so I wanted to ask Payton, where is the number one place that kids your age get your music from? Obviously the internet, but are you going through things like Tidal and Spotify, or are you going through Pandora, or what do you do?
We use Apple Music and Amazon Music. We use that.
Amazon Music
and Spotify.
Okay. And so, with that being said, they are paying for their music they're getting. They're not just downloading it like Napster was and, you know, getting it for free and everything. So they are paying for it, but I think the problem is that money is never making it to the musicians. And I think that's one of the biggest problems is the corporate greed, the corporate entity involved in the music business has gotten so big that it's eaten up everything. And, you know, so one thing I wonder is, so when I was younger, if I wanted something to listen to, I'd have to buy a tape or a vinyl or whatever, or CD, and I would buy it because of one song or two songs I'd heard on the radio. But then those one or two songs, obviously leading me to buying the whole album, would get me to listening to the whole album, and there's where I would discover the other stuff that's not on the radio, that's not the pop stuff, that is even better a lot of times. You know, a lot of times the biggest hit on a record is not always the best songs, you know? And so how does that happen with people your age?
So on TikTok, it's pretty much like forced on us because we hear it so much, like it's because it becomes a trend, so everybody uses that sound. So then it's pretty much forced on us to like that song. So then we'll start liking that artist, so then we'll start listening to more of their songs.
So that's a little bit like the old school payola, where, you know, a record company would put out an artist with an album, and they'd go to the radio stations and they'd pay the radio stations to play that song or these songs. And after so long, those songs, everybody, even if it's a crappy song, next thing you know, everybody thinks it's a hit because they've learned it. They've listened to it so many times that all of a sudden, you know, you like it. And you don't really realize why you like it. It's just that you've heard it so many times over and over again. Not to change subjects, but I just want to tell a little quick story about how that actually happened. So when I was young, I worked at a zoo, and the owner of the zoo had previously owned like a carnival, like a traveling circus type carnival thing. And so he had speakers throughout the zoo that he would play this carnival music, like stuff you'd hear on a merry-go-round, that kind of music constantly, right? And at the same time, I was in a blues band playing, you know, bass, and it was crazy how, because I had to hear that carnival crap all day long, I got to actually kind of liking it, you know, and when I wouldn't hear it, I would want to hear it, and which is really weird because that music is repetitive, boring, not what you really want to hear. So what she's saying is it's kind of like if you don't have a really good burger and you just eat at Hardee's all the time, then you think Hardee's is really the good stuff, and then you go to a real restaurant that has a good burger and you don't even think that really good burger is any better than Hardee's because you're so used to the Hardee's. You know, I remember a friend of mine was over here one time, and I said, oh, I'm going to cook us a couple filet mignons. And this girl was like, filet mignon, that's awful. I want a hamburger. And I'm going, hold on a second. You're missing the point. You've missed the boat. And so I think that's kind of what's going on with music is they're being force-fed this stuff that's, a lot of it has AI generated music, auto-tune stuff, and the artists themselves can't even really go out and play this stuff and reproduce it live. And I think it's hurting a lot of different aspects of music because, so Payton is 15 now, right? And how many concerts have you ever been to in your life?
One.
She's been to one. I started going to concerts when I was 11 years old. One of the first shows I saw was Chicago. Then I saw Kenny Rogers and the Righteous Brothers. Then it was Ozzy and, Motley Crue and Rat and, all the metal stuff. And so by the time I was 15, I'd probably been to 15 or 20 concerts or more. And the Grateful Dead. I was into a big variety of music, so I listened to a lot of stuff. And so the fact that they're just being force-fed this stuff on TikTok and everything, they don't really, I guess for lack of a better term, fall in love with the artist. Are there any artists out there that you can just, oh man, I love this person?
It's pretty much just like most like country people, like rap, like just anybody.
Like Morgan Wallen and stuff, and Luke Combs, and see, a lot of that is good stuff, but because the radio stations are only playing what they're told to play and what they're paid to play, they're not free to just go throw on some Turnpike Troubadours or some Robert Earl Keen or, Cross Canadian Ragweed or whatever. And because of that, they're only getting, it's almost like going to a seafood buffet and only eating the crab. You're not getting all the other good stuff, And I think that's what's really hurting the business is this control, basically, of the market by the big corporations. And the way that it's set up, I believe Jelly Roll has a really good video out there about the cuts that the musicians are getting when they sign these recording contracts with a big record company. And, it used to be like 60-40, maybe 70-30, but now they're up to where a lot of times the record company's getting 95%, 90%, and the artist is only getting a small amount, So, I think the whole thing needs to be a little restructured, and I respect a lot of bands who put their own money into going and doing it themselves, recording the albums themselves, putting it out themselves, promoting themselves, doing a lot of live. Reckless Kelly's a great example of a band who's done that. They basically just formed their own record company and did it all on their own. And yeah, they've never had the big, huge commercial success that, Carrie Underwood or someone like that has had. But they're a very successful band. A lot of people love them. But there's a lot to be said because I know of, and I'm not going to name any names, but I know of some other artists who got signed with big record companies, recorded albums, the record company put a lot into them, promoted them, had them in Rolling Stone magazine, had them all over the place, and they never took off. And next thing you know, they're dropped by the record company, but yet they still have this monster debt that they've got to pay back to the record company. And I know one person who, she's no longer in the music business at all. She just kind of got scared off by it, but she still owes a lot of debt and probably will never be able to completely pay off that debt. So do you see any solutions?
I don't really know. I feel like maybe if some of like the older people playing music would, like if they were like playing music on the radio, they could try to like figure out a way, like try to talk to the person that's telling them to play music to try to get them to play, other music that we'd want to listen to, like, you know what I mean, like the older music nowadays on the radio. Because now it's just like the music that we want to listen to.
So basically more freedom. More freedom for the radio station to play whatever they want.
Yeah.
And
to shouldn't be forced to play music they don't want to play.
Yeah, because that's... we got a cat over here who's about to have an issue. I think I'm going to have to put him outside here. Y'all meet Putty Tat. He's our mascot.
He is.
He's got a hairball, it looks like. Putty Tap was a street cat that someone brought me because he lived behind an auto zone on the highway, and you couldn't touch him at all when we first got him, and now he's just oh, that's a wasp. That's not good. Okay, so now we got a wasp in the house. That's not good either. We'll deal with that in a minute. But so what she's saying is that the radio stations need more, I guess you'd say, freedom from the record companies to play, what they find and what they dig, and therefore they're able to turn other people onto this stuff. Because there's so much great music out there. There's no lack of good music out there right now. There's tons and tons of great music out there. The problem is they've made it to where the musicians can't make a living. And so these super talented musicians who would be putting out incredible music, they're forced to go work as an accountant or sling a hammer, and do things like that. So I really appreciate her perspective because I think it's something that's been going on since pretty much the beginning of radio. But I think that there needs to be a solution to it where we can get back to the musicians being able to make a living and feel comfortable with it. And, here in America, unfortunately, musicians aren't as respected as they are in some other parts of the world. You go to other parts of the world, musicians are pretty highly respected. It's just here in America, they look at all artists as, oh, you're a starving artist, you're a starving artist. Well, the reality is, it's the general public's view of musicians that makes it that way. If the general public respected musicians more and respected art as what it is, art of any form, whether it's visual art or music or whatever it is, art is what decorates our lives and keeps our lives from being boring, right? And I think we need more of all types of art. And if you were to just say you were to just get rid of music altogether and there's no music, well then everything you watch on the TV is going to be different. Think about it. Every TV show out there has its own theme song, has its own, music to it. And if you were to just take music away, it would mess up everything. And not only that, music, like it or not, is part of our natural world. You walk outside, you hear music, whether there's a person playing music or not. Birds are making music, animals are making music. Music is part of it. It's in our DNA. And I think that we just need more of that. And I agree with what Payton says, is more artistic freedom, and rather than keeping everyone under a rock and not being able to discover all this new stuff, they need to allow it, I think that's what's cool about, public radio and some things like that, where they have different shows where they'll play jazz or they'll play this or they'll bluegrass and things like that. Because, believe it or not, a lot of it's very tied together. Bluegrass and heavy metal to me are very similar, especially the fast bluegrass. You look at the fast bluegrass and you look at a lot of the fast metal, they're very similar. It's just the keys are different and some of the modes and things like that are different. But yeah, thank you for coming on here, Payton. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have you back on again to talk some more about music. And one thing I do want to touch on is that I think because of this keeping everybody like a horse with blinders on and you're not experiencing all this music, I think it has cut down on the amount of younger people who want to play instruments, who want to play guitar, who want to play bass, who want to play drums, And yeah, you can look on the internet and look on YouTube. There's tons of great kids out there, great drummers and bass players. There's tons of them, but there's not as many, I don't think, as there used to be. And I believe that no matter what you choose to do with your life, whether you want to be a farmer, a plumber, a painter, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is, music adds to your life. Music makes your quality of life better. It does. And just like a movie allows you to kind of escape your day-to-day life and get out of it for a while and focus on something else, music does the same thing. And music is, ask any deadhead, music is an extremely healing thing. Music pulls people together, it heals people, and it makes us all realize we are all one. We are all the same. You know, I'm no different than somebody living in wherever, Timbuktu or whatever. We all like a lot of the same things. And I do believe, in general, pretty much anywhere you go in the world, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good. Yeah, we're always going to have a little bad, but the good outweighs the bad, I think, all the way around. So I just want to encourage people, encourage your children. If you got kids, let them try one instrument. If they don't like that, let them try another one. Let them try something else. You know, you never know. I started out playing guitar and wound up playing bass because nobody else wanted to play bass. And I bought a bass and I was like, okay, now I'm going to play bass. But now I play guitar, bass, mandolin, piano. I try to play drums. I'm not a drummer. I would never hire myself to be a drummer. And so, but I believe that, you know, I remember when I was a child, my parents had me playing basketball and baseball and various sports that I was awful at, every one of them. I was never good at them. And I literally remember sitting in school one day in 6th grade and looking across the desk, and there was a girl I know sitting there reading a circus magazine, and it had, I think, Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads on the cover playing a guitar, and all of a sudden a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, that's it, I'm a guitar player. I'd already been playing guitar for a couple of years, but I was ashamed to admit it, didn't want to tell anybody I played guitar. And but that moment changed everything, because I thought, I'm a guitar player, and that's how I'm gonna get chicks. And that changed everything for me. So, well, Payton, it was really good to talk to you. I hope everybody has a good day, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Have a good one now.